Okay, week four. This week we talked about science fiction, fantasy, horror. Um, for this week, I'm not really into the science fiction and fantasy and all of that, so I had a hard time getting into the stories and the movie this week. It's just not what I'm interested in, so I didn't enjoy it as much. But in the text, it says, perhaps they provide an escape from the difficulties of life, or they allow young adults to enjoy vicarious experiences and investigate worlds where the impossible becomes possible, or where technology makes dreams come true. So, this kind of genre is an escape for adolescents and lets them escape the real world for a little bit and get involved with something else. And then in the article that about the dystopian literature, similarly, Walk stated that reading dystopian novels allows students to question the world we have and envision a better world we could have because these texts offer unique opportunities to teach these habits of mind. I thought that was interesting because I had a conversation during one of my courses, how it's so important to have our students be critical learners, to question the world around them and to question different things. And I feel when I teach first grade, my kids are really critical. It's just because they're curious. They question everything. They want to know why about everything. And I just wondered at the adolescence, the higher middle school, high school level, are they that critical anymore? Do they question things? Because I feel like peer pressure kind of takes over. So they're sort of nervous to, or they go with what their friend says instead of forming their own opinion and questioning the world around them. So I found that interesting, and I was wondering, do students still stay critical learners at that age? And if not, maybe this literature would be important to get in the curriculum so that students do become more critical students. Okay, for this week, um, the movie, I'll start with that. Moonrise Kingdom, it's with Sam and Susie. It's a young love story. They fall in love and they decide to run away together. Um, and one of the quotes I took, they want to go on adventures. They both said they want to go on adventures and they don't want to get stuck in just one place. They both said that time when they were together. Um, I didn't care for the movie at all. I didn't get into it. It's just not what I enjoy. But um, that was the movie this week. And then I have Lincoln's Grave Robbers. I didn't originally have this book. I picked another book, Salvage, but I could not get into it. It was too far off for me. I just could not. So I asked the professor for suggestions, and she suggested a nonfiction mystery, so that it's a true story, but it has some suspense to it, and that worked. I actually enjoyed Lincoln's Grave Robbers. Um, it's not typically what I get into, but I needed something like this to get into this week. Um, so this tells the story about conies, which are they fake money, and then they decide one of their men are in prison, and so they decide that they're gonna go rob um, Lincoln's grave and steal his body so that they can kind of hold it at ransom and ask for money and ask for a way to get the guy out of prison, because they want him out of prison because he is the best coney maker and they need him to keep their business going. So it was really interesting, actually. Um, let's see. I have a few quotes. Um, Today we think Secret Service agents are the guys in dark suits protecting the president, but that happened later. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865, then President James Garfield in 1881, and then President William McKinley in 1901. Only then did it occur to Congress that someone should be guarding the president, and they gave the job to Secret Service. I didn't realize at first Secret Service were only used to stop counterfeiters, the conies. And I didn't realize that. I thought they were there to protect the president the whole time, but really they weren't. So I found that pretty interesting. And then another quote I took from the book. Back in his office, Tyrell sat down to write a special report for Chief Brooks. He wanted an exact accounting of every penny spent on the Lincoln case. Tyrell's report was long and detailed, listing each expense and its costs, including payments to Sweegles and Billy Brown, train tickets, hotel rooms, hack rides, meals, telegraphs, even the $2 Tyrell spent on the new shoes for Jack Hughes. In total, Tyrell reported busting up the plot to steal Lincoln's body had cost the U.S. government $393.32. So just the whole process of it was just interesting to see. In the end, all of that for stopping the crime of stealing Lincoln's body, it only cost $393 in that day. And just thinking today how much it would actually really cost if they were doing, something like this, just the complete difference in the time period. I actually enjoyed Lincoln's Grave Robbers. I'm glad I found a book like that I could actually get more into. The other book that we all had to read was Bone Gap by Laura Ruby. Just the mysteries that happen in Bone Gap and how Rosa comes into their life and then all of a sudden she is kidnapped and Finn tries to tell his side of the story but nobody believes Finn, and so he decides to take it upon himself to go find her and get her back. It was okay. I didn't really get too into it, but it was okay. I wouldn't read it again, but a few quotes I took from this book. Let's see. The chickens, not the children. The way they knew what the Cordero family had a ghost that liked to rifle through the fridge at night. The way they knew that Priscilla Willis, the beekeeper's homely daughter, had a sting worse than any bee. The way they knew that Bone Gap had gaps just wide enough for people to slip through, or slip away, leaving only their stories behind. So talking about everything that slipped through the gap, that Bone Gap. And then there was a poem, too, that I'll read. Reaching for the stars, with hope inside our hearts, we're growing, changing, yearning, the fire within us burning. To be the people we need to be, to make the changes we need to see, we must keep reaching for the stars, with hope inside our hearts. I thought that was a really good quote that went with the book, about hope and how Finn, he lost his mom, and then Rose is gone, and he's kind of awkward, so just to always find hope. But this was an okay book. And then this week, they just said this is an interesting genre it's an escape where people, adolescents can use their imagination and be creative with it. And I feel students this is kind of an escape for them, this genre, so they can kind of sneak away in their own and read these stories, and I feel like students would be more motivated to read these kinds of books that they're interested in. And in the article, research has shown quite clearly that the more interested a student is in a text, the more likely that the student is to use metacognitive knowledge and strategies about reading to comprehend the text. So when they're more interested, they're getting more out of the story, which I feel is so important, rather than keeping, the classics that students aren't really interested in anymore. Giving them some of the young adult literature so that they can be more interested, and they will get a lot out of it. They will be learning different strategies and just comprehending it more deeply and understanding it. But that is week 4.